Alright, what's up everybody? This is Martin Mopex Forever and welcome to some talk about multitasking. I was asked by one of our subscribers to explain about multitasking in ROBOTC, and I do think it is one of the very basic and important features in ROBOTC. I'm going to make a video just to talk about it. Alright, so say that this is my Skyrise competition code. I'm using it as an example. So say that right here is my task user control, and just ignore those stuff. Say that I have a while loop that starts my autonomous and maps all of my that does all of my driver control things, which means that I send my joystick signals to the motor. That's one thing I want to constantly update every 20 milliseconds, which is to check whether the buttons are pressed on the controller or not, and then send them to the robot, or maybe incorporate some sensors like to map the joystick to the motors. That's one thing I want to do directly using the joystick to control the motors. However, there's another thing I also want to do. Where is it? Long autonomous. What I also want to do is I also want to have a loop that updates my LCD displays. And where is it? Let me find it. No. Here is it. I also want a while loop that updates my LCD displays, because every 10 milliseconds I want to refresh my LCD display values about the sensors so I can know exactly where the sensors are at all time on my LCD, which is what I'm doing in my LCD series to teach you how to do that. So these two are very different things, and I also have some other things to do. For instance, I have a gyro task. Let me see. I have a little small task that offsets my gyro, which professionally it shouldn't necessarily be a separate task, but you can do it anyway. You have another task that does something very different, not controlling the motors, not offsetting the not updating the LCD, but you are doing you need another repetitive structure that updates something else every 10 milliseconds to 20 milliseconds. Well, one way to do all of those simultaneously, because we need to do those simultaneously, one of the ways to do those simultaneously is to do one huge while loop, usually your driver control or your driver control loop, is to do one huge while loop, put all of them in one while loop, so every time the loop runs, everything gets updated. However, this thing can get very tedious, and it's not necessarily the smartest way to do this. Well, in EasyC, this is certainly, you have to do this because there's no multitasking feature. But in robots, you don't have to do that. You can just divide them into their own loops, and the loops can run simultaneously, and it's just a much easier way to manage stuff like it is just a much easier way to manage the loop. So this is the multitasking feature of ROBOTC. Basically, multitasking is allowing you to run multiple while loops or for loops or repetitive structures, or just two tasks, or just two strings of commands at the exact same time. You don't have to mash those commands together to create one huge command. You can run those two at the same time. For instance, let me just give you one example of how this thing works. For instance, in my autonomous. Well, this is just messed up, let me just explain this. For instance, I can say that I time my, or I use my sensor to measure how long my robot went, maybe using some PID. However, during that looping, if I do not use a multitasking feature, I cannot update my lift. I cannot use another sensor to monitor the lift unless I integrate the lift monitoring into my base monitoring, which is just messed up, which is going to be very difficult. However, with multitasking, you can say that at the 3 seconds into autonomous, I set my lift to go this height, while 2 seconds into autonomous, I start my robot's base, and the base goes right here. So when the base is going, your lift automatically gets started. You don't have to say that somewhere in my base movement I start my lift. That's one example of multitasking. You can run two streams of commands at the same time without needing to mesh them together and worry about how do I get everything exactly right. And the other advantage of using it is that, let me give you an example. let's just go back to our driver control view values. All right. Say that a lot of times, sometimes in the loop, sometimes in your loop, it's very important, or it's just a structure that you necessarily need to pause the loop for a second and wait for something to happen. For instance, in this case, I want when I press the right button or one of my buttons on the second joystick controller, I want to subtract one from my a counting variable. However, I can't just say subtract one because when I press that button, it just keeps subtracting. So I need a while loop, a wait structure to wait until I release the button to keep running the loop again, to keep checking whether I press it again, or to use some sort of a wait command, wait half a second or something. Just make sure you don't press a button for more than half a second. So both of those things, by eliminating the issue of when you're pressing the button, the number just goes down infinitely fast, and it just goes down. We eliminated that issue, but it also needs you to pause the loop. So what will happen if we do not use multitasking and integrate this thing into the main driver loop? What's going to happen is that when you press that button, your robot does not move, or when you press that button, the robot keeps moving without stopping because the motor signal is no longer updated. The loop is paused, and that's bad. What I want to do is that when my first driver is driving the robot and I want to mess around with the LCD, I want to press the buttons without interrupting his driving or making him say, "Aren't there something go wrong with the robot?" Right? And this is just something very small. But if you want to do something like flash, let me see if I can find it. Yes, if you want to do something like non-autonomous selection, but if you want to do something like flash the LCD background light when I press a button, and you have to do some sort of waiting structure in it. So you say turn on the LCD background light, wait 3 seconds, and then turn it off, and which is basically like flashing. You have to do something like wait, and this is a lot of waiting. So basically, if you integrate this entire thing into your main driver control loop, you would be like, after you press the flash button, like if you press a button and you use a flash to indicate that you press the button, the command is executed, you have to wait the entire time while you're flashing, and that is bad. So those are the two good uses of multitasking, actually three. First is just divide stuff up nicely into bite-sized chunks so that you don't have to go into one huge while loop and look for everything. Second, it's in autonomous. It allows you to run two streams simultaneously, so that you can say, I have a base control stream, I have a lift control stream, I can start the lift exactly at 3 seconds without worrying where my base is. And the third is that when it comes to some program structures where you need a delay in the loop, you can delay a separate loop that is in a separate task that won't affect anything else at all. So those are the three advantages of multitasking. Also, so essentially, to reiterate, the multitasking is running a bunch of while loops at the same time. How many while loops at the same time? Theoretically, let me go open it up just to show you some more stuff. Theoretically, how many while loops can you open at the same time? I believe it's 20. Let's see. Because that's what the competition template says. So this, I'm opening up my modded competition template. Do not ever mod your competition template. That will cause your competition to not go well for your robot. Alright, so this is my competition template. Note here, they have a little user function, stop all tasks. And it only appears that they stop one of the 19 tasks. I mean, you can give a name to your task, but basically, it appears that you can only have a maximum number of 19 tasks in ROBOTC. So plan out accordingly. But usually, you won't even need to use 19 of all 19 tasks. Perhaps that, because this is not a computer. Because if I open up my task manager, you can see a computer has a bunch of processes down here, and they're all like different tasks, just like the different tasks we have in ROBOTC. But ROBOTC is much smaller scale robot stuff. Also, I need to remind you that somebody famous I'm not necessarily on ROBOTC forum a lot, but I do have an account and I do go check and help people from time to time there. I remember somebody famous on ROBOTC forum, they said that when talking about multitasking, they say that 99% of errors or mistakes or bugs in ROBOTC, they are caused by the multitasking feature, which I completely agree. Multitasking is awesome, it's great, but it has so many little kinks that if you don't get to work out, it's gonna screw you over, like how it screwed me over, screw my team over at World Championship. Well, I'm just basically gonna tell you, if you are going to compete in a vector robotics competition, you're going to use the competition template and the field control. And every time when you generate a competition template, this thing is going to appear. Stop tasks, Boolean stop tasks between modes. Either you can set it either to true or false. Well, what does that mean? Like tasks, perhaps the first time you don't even know what it is, and usually it's set to true, which really messes which really messes you up after you start multitasking and you forget about this. So, what this does is that it stops all the tasks between the mode, which means that when the field control, if this is set to true, when the field control disables everything, all the tasks are stopped, which is an issue. Say that I just basically this thing causes 2 matches. I just put this thing here. Say that you only started this task in the pre-autumn, and then it's everything awesome. This task started in pre-autumn. When you're testing offline, you are not running autonomous, no field control can stop you. Just started in pre-autumn, awesome, and then you can do everything with it. In user control, this thing still started. However, after when you're on the field, you finish your pre-autumn. This is set to true, and finish pre-autumn, and boom. This thing is basically field control stops. Field control stops everything here. If this is set to true and you finish your pre-autumn before match, the field control stops everything here. So that if you start some task like this right here, and you forget to start it in autonomous, you need to use it in autonomous, this is not starting autonomous, so it might mess up your autonomous. So if you set this to true, make sure that you restart all the tasks that you should use in your autonomous. This is very important. And stop all the tasks at the end of autonomous if you're not going to use them. Alright, so this is one of the tricks. And at the end, let me just introduce the some of the 2 commands that I use. First is of course start task. You can declare a task, but you just basically do is you just go to start task. This is start task, and the name of a task, semicolon, and you can also stop a task. And you declare the name of it, just like how I start task right here. I start the task I declared previously the gyro processing block. I start it, and I can stop tasks that I use in the autonomous to control my lift. I can start it or stop it. The other thing is that a task is very different from a user function. The user function just runs and nothing goes wrong. However, because autonomous is declared as a task, autonomous can, if you don't do it the correct way, you somehow start autonomous in your drive control, the drive control still runs while autonomous still runs. So it's possible to see the motors glitching. Whenever you see the motors glitching, is a multitasking error. Is that probably, if it's not a motor control mapping error, probably is gonna be you are running 2 tasks simultaneously, and both of those tasks are giving different commands to the motor, so the motors glitch. So basically that's it. If you have any trouble in the future about multitasking, or you have some errors, you can just ask me. I had a bunch of experience with multitasking. Also, go on Vex forum, check out Mr. Pearman's explanation of Vex forum. The multitasking, which I will attach on the bottom. So this is Smart Vex, whatever, something about multitasking, and I will see you in the next video.